There it is. Hello, Lomentini lit up, and here's what I'm lit up about. A lot of you guys have been paying attention to me, realize that I'm not afraid to say it, I'm redoing a podcast today with a gentleman I'm really excited for you all to meet, to get to know this guy. I just enjoy his presence, and he's got a great presence. That's what's so awesome about this guy. Not only does he have this booming voice that he could do voiceovers and probably make a ton of money with, but he's just got a great presence when he walks into the room, and he's always got something good to say. What I like about some of the things that he says is he's just going to tell you how it is.
Right.
So everybody, Alex Jimenez here. We are redoing this, and I'm going to keep saying that because it's a mistake I wanted to make sure I don't do again, because last time we talked, the content was absolutely amazing. Yep. And it flowed well. And so I was nervous about having this talk again, because I didn't want it to seem choppy and planned out like all these little notes I've got over here, because I wanted to make sure somehow we captured that moment that we had last week.
I was going to say last year, where was I at?
Yeah, exactly. God, where were we? Can you believe it's already November 15th almost?
It's crazy.
I was complaining about the weather, and she goes, "Are you serious?" My wife, Stacy, she's like, "Are you serious? It's almost November 15th. And
right.
Yeah.
It's not snowing.
Right.
Yet.
Alex, tell everybody about you, who you are. You know, that is one of those things, when you have an interview, and I know you do some coaching. Mm-hmm. How do you get people to get past when someone says, just tell me about yourself?
Usually what I do is I lay out and I say, I want this format. This is what I want to know. Your name, where you're from, what it is you do, and how long you've been doing it, and what drives you to do it, right? And so we ask that format of questions. The reason behind it is because it's much easier than tell me about you. Well, what is it do you want to know?
Right.
I'm a Leo. I like long walks on the beach. I like sunsets. I mean, I don't care for sand. Just want to clarify that, and I don't care about sunsets, but I'm a Leo. But yeah, so that format. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a branch manager for a mortgage company here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. I do coaching. I do coaching for performance coaching side of mortgage, loan officers. I also do some mindset coaching. I've got my hands in quite a few different buckets, so to speak. But the main thing I want everyone to know about me is my drive and my will to give back and to help others.
When did that happen? Was there a moment in time where you started giving and you're like, man, this feels good, and you got more out of it?
I think I remember being a young kid and my mom always telling other people I'd give the shirt off my back to somebody else. No questions asked, right? I think the ability so mentally what we don't process is to give means what? Well, to give to some people means to give you money. Money helps, right? Mm-hmm. To give to other people means to give you time, to give you energy, to give you whatever it is. So there's always been a level of giving, but for me mentally, what I can give the most now is demonstrating, or at least analyzing my past and helping other people pull their past out to get rid of some of those limiting beliefs or the things that are blocking us from kind of growing to the next level.
That's an interesting gift, because it's not monetary.
Right.
It's not a piece of something.
Right.
And it's a freedom.
Well, and here's the thing, and you're right. It's a freedom in the sense, like I already contain this thing, right? But from a monetary standpoint, what I've learned to realize as time progresses is wealth and everything else is realistically the freedom of time, right? And so instead of the monetary exchange, if I have time, if I have advice, if I have something to give you that $1 couldn't pay for, then isn't that more valuable?
Right.
So
you just ooze confidence.
I try to.
No, because I was thinking about that before we started, and I wanted to know, was there a point I always I don't know, let me go back a little bit. It seems like I'm really kind of fixated on these points in time, because ever since I went through that timeline therapy with Greg, and it seems like, I can pinpoint that. And it's kind of liberating a little bit, like that's why I started doing this.
Yep.
Were you always so confident, or was there a point where things just kind of...
I wouldn't say always confident. So, and we discussed this before. I was physically abused by my stepdad, which is not my most recent stepdad that everyone knows, Ed. It wasn't him. It was my previous stepdad. So I was physically abused from a child up until about 11, 12 years old. And so the confidence almost had to exist to shield other people from finding out what was going on. Right.
Wow.
And so I had to be confident when someone asked about, hey, what are those bruises on your arm? Oh, nothing. I was playing. Right. You have to deliver that in a confident manner. If not, they start questioning. The other thing is the abusive side of him was also instilling that additional confidence. Like, you're a man, you walk with your chin up, your eyes forward, you don't look down, you have eye contact with people. So there was a level of that, but the biggest piece was the self-preservation. That's where the confidence had to exist to make sure that I was internally okay. Mm-hmm. So
one thing about you, you're very confident in sharing your personal issues. Mm-hmm. And when I first heard about it, when we were having our men's group, you were talking about your mother.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about everybody goes through their so-called rock bottom, which is subjective. Yep. And a lot of people, when you hear the phrase rock bottom, it's like you're down and out, you're out for the count, you're bleeding, you're done. Right. And it's, maybe that's not the right word. Maybe it's pivot or finding that moment in life where you just got to turn this thing around.
Yep.
You would share that story about your mom?
Yeah. So we were talking about rock bottom, and the thing is we discussed rock bottom subjective depending on who you are and what you consider to be your bottom. I came from my mother. She had used drugs most of my childhood, and it got things into a sticky situation. She was eventually arrested for selling drugs. This is back when we lived in California, and eventually she came clean. That was after we moved to Iowa, of all places, California to Iowa.
Wow.
We moved there. She stayed clean for about 17 years, and she got wrapped up with individuals that was kind of their life, and she fell back into it very easily. I think the absence of drugs makes it easy for a drug user to be away from it. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as it's reintroduced, it's like, whoa, hey, here's this thing. And I know that part of it started from the doctor prescribing Adderall, right? Which it's not the fault of the doctor. Let me be super clear that I'm not blaming the doctor for the reintroduction of drugs, but here's this thing. It's like being a bartender and a patron comes up who's an alcoholic and you say, would you like a beer? And they say, well, yes, I will. It's the fault of the patron, right?
Right.
She should have known better. And I'm not making judgment whether she did or not, but that's eventually what evolved into she overdosed on methamphetamines. And that's what it ended up being. And it's one of those things when you look at history and you look at life and everything else, did she know she was going down that path, or did that path open itself up and she just followed, wherever it needed to be?
Does that story and that personal story of your mother, does that help you in your journey in life? Do you use it as an anchor, or do you use it as like, you know what, I can use that to help others, or do you use it to help yourself or help others? So
I think more of help others, right? Because for me, there's still, I dealt with the passing of my mom and everything else. I dealt with that very harshly.
I bet, sure.
I spent almost 2 years getting drunk every single night. Like, my goal was, hey, go home, work's done, crack open that bottle of vodka, let me go ahead and drink half. So I have half for tomorrow, right? Because Sundays, the liquor store wasn't open, so you had to have half for the next day. And that's literally, I was pulling my family apart by doing this every single night. Like, thank God that my fiance was a very patient individual that didn't decide to leave, because she very well could have during that time. But now it's one of those things. It's, everything traumatic in life that I've dealt with, I've went through a cycle of this, I'm doing bad until I'm doing different. And then I started looking at it, and it's like, okay, what could I do to really help others to not go through what it was I went through? And so I use it as a way to help. And as far as how does that help me, I just like helping people.
Right.
So.
Because you do a lot of coaching. So, and a lot of that stuff that we've talked about here is addiction in some form. Right. And addiction is not all about alcohol. It's not all about drugs. Right. There's a lot of different addictions out there. So have you been exposed to all the coaching and the people that you're seeing? What kind of other addictions are people struggling with right now?
There's
or are they opening up to tell you, or do you see it?
They are. A lot of people struggle with the addiction of the pat on the back. The, hey, you're the best. You did a great job. Congratulations. And I'm a person that.
Wow. Never even thought of that as being an addiction, like the constant
gratification.
Yeah. Wow.
And so what you see is people who are normally pretty level, as long as they're getting the, hey, good job, hey, good job, hey, good job. So all of a sudden that goes away, and they need it. And so their personal life is struggling because of it, because they only want to find that success. And so they're willing to sacrifice everything else it takes in order to achieve that high, so to speak, right?
Right.
Because let it be known, listen, all of us know this to be true. When somebody gives us a pat on the back, it usually it creates this thing inside where that, okay, that feels good. It's not much different from an individual that takes drugs or drinks beer or does all those other things, because it makes you feel good for that little point in time. Well, then that drive, it's like, well, I've got to get another.
Right.
How do I get another? Another addiction that we commonly see is people that are addicted to people. So this is something that a lot of the world really struggles with, is people are addicted to people, meaning I have to have a girlfriend. You have to have a boyfriend. I have to have
that
somebody
hits home.
to fix.
That hits home in a lot of ways. Just settle down and rock your world, and all that stuff will happen. But it's one thing to tell someone, you know what I mean? And then how do you overcome those things? I see it all the time. It's like, I think we always get addicted, 15 minutes will fly by and you just been scrolling.
Right.
But people are addicted to how many friends they have on social media, how many likes they have on a picture, or they'll actually delete it if they don't get enough likes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or they'll do things, the TikTok and everything else. It's like people are willing to do some pretty crazy things.
Right.
Just to get that, again, the pat on the back, right? The like, the heart, the whatever it is. It's these fake things that exist, but we get our little jolt of energy out of it because that's our reality.
My wife, to her credit, she deleted her social media 2 years ago.
Wow.
And she's just like, feels liberated. I have to tell her what's going on. It's like, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday. Because if it wasn't for Facebook, I wouldn't know whose birthdays when.
Exactly. I'm guilty of that same thing.
But you use analogies a lot.
I do.
Right. And is it something that just kind of naturally happened for you? Or did you learn like, hey, man, if I start using these analogies, I can communicate better?
I think it was a natural thing. Articulating information to people was always something. From a verbal standpoint, my communication level is much, much higher than a written standpoint. But being able to make things relatable to other people is just something. I don't know at what point in my life that became a thing. But the analogies allows me to understand that, okay, now that person gets it, right? I don't know when it happened.
But they only work if you kind of know the person a little bit, or have some sort of interaction with the guy. Like, oh, the guy likes these kind of things. He likes watches or whatever. Right. Let me use this analogy to kind of get through to this guy.
Yep. And some of that is asking those questions, right? So an introduction to that may be this. Let's pretend like you and I are new. I just met you, right? And so maybe I go to give you an analogy, and I'll say something like, hey, Patrick, you know what? Tell me one of your biggest hobbies. What is something you like to collect?
Right.
And so I pull that information. You may say, well, watches. And I may say, well, listen, it's kind of like when you go to the store and you see all these wristwatches, right? There's 100 in the cabinet, and this one particular one is just calling out to you, be it the color, the way it sparkles, the way it this, whatever it is. By me pulling that one little bit, as long as I have life experience in that category, I can share with you an analogy. Right.
You made a great point. As long as you've had some sort of experience, because that can easily come across as fake.
Correct.
If you have no idea what you're talking about.
Correct.
Trying to communicate. We just talked about some stuff off air about, we're both in sales, and in sales, I think people like my wife, for example, she worked for a consultant firm, and everybody, regardless of who you were in the company, everybody had a quota.
Right. Right.
Everybody had a value that she had to bring in, but she was a consultant. So she goes, I don't have any interaction with the end user. Right. I'm always on the backside of things. So I hate being considered a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson, but I'm like, babe, you sell me every day on various things. And so I think people use that as a negative. But one thing I'm going through, and one of the things I guess you don't understand in sales until you have had experience, until you've had wisdom, and wisdom only comes through experience. Right. You can tell your kid not to touch that, but hey, I've touched it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Like cold calling. I hate the idea. I've always hated it, but using things like analogies and getting to know your client, and actually believing in what you're doing.
Right.
We talked a little bit about and I used the word angle. I have this angle with this client of mine, and I hate to use the word angle. What is a better word? I mean, why does the word angle seem so negative?
I think because the word angle is such a salesy, we're used to that being introduced as just like salesperson. Now, let me remind people, and I'm also going to remind you of this, right? And myself. Sales sometimes has to exist to allow people to make the proper decision for themselves. So from a sales standpoint, if I have a client they're just not getting the fact that they're going to save this money and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, I have to articulate to them why it's important for them to save that money, or why it's important for them to build that wealth or get that cash or do whatever it is that they have to do. And so my sales portion has to kick in order to build the confidence with them, right? So angle, you can utilize the word angle, or you can even say things like my direction with this.
There you go.
The way that I can complete. There's all kinds of different words, but angle is a word that we all understand.
Well, it was great because I was sharing it to you, and you've done this a couple of times with me, especially with the Barcade Music Festival coming up. I give you where I'm at with it, and you're like, how about you do it this way? Right. And so even with the Barcade Music Festival, I said, hey, I got this going on, but what about and that's the beautiful thing about the mastermind, or getting guys together and sharing it. There's no wrong answers. It's just that, hey, what about that?
Yeah.
With that said, not everybody can be a leader though.
Yeah.
How do you consider yourself a leader?
I do. Yes.
All right. How do you talk to those who aren't leaders? And I don't know. Let me see if I can put it in perspective. You are not going to find me standing in line to go anywhere, unless it's my kid going to Disneyland. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wait. I was never that guy to wait outside to get inside of a bar.
Yep.
I'm not going to be that guy. I don't like concerts because I feel like sheep.
Right.
I'll listen to you on the radio, or I'll put it in my CD or TV or whatever.
CD.
Yeah, right. It tells you how old I am. Right. But some people can't be leaders.
Right.
So how do you motivate those people to say it's okay to be a follower?
So that's kind of a catch-22, and here's why. Some people are leaders by default. If you have children, you are a leader by default. Whether you realize or not, that young boy or girl is looking to you for guidance and direction. You are, by definition, at that point, a leader, right? And so what you can do is you can either grasp and control and lead the right way, or you can relinquish it and allow that person to find somebody else to lead them. An example of that is this weekend I was listening to something that says part of the issue is people don't spend enough time with their children. They want their children to develop to be something, but they allow their children to spend their time on YouTube or something like that. So YouTube is giving your kids the direction. YouTube is being their leader, right? So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is this: if you can't lead something in a positive or in a direction that's going to help benefit people, then step back and allow the natural leader to pop up. Don't suppress the leader. So we get in a position where we think managers are leaders. That's absolutely wrong. Your manager is probably not the leader of your team or your company. Your manager is there to manage. Your leaders are there to lead, to reach the end goal. But by definition, we title leader and manager together.
Right.
When in reality, I was part of a larger sales team earlier in my career, and there were 6 other loan officers. We had a team manager, but I, by definition, was the leader of those other people.
Like they've said, not your best salesperson is not necessarily your best manager.
Correct.
Because that's your leader. That's your horse.
Yep.
Yeah. And you put him in a management position, he's like, this isn't what I do.
No, it's not at all. I don't want any part. Being in my position as the only salesperson on my team, I am the production person, right? I don't want to manage a bunch of people. I've had opportunity over and over. I've done management before. It's not my strong suit, not because I'm not able to lead, guide, or train people. It's because if most of my time is more productive down here, why would I put it over here?
Right.
So,
well, sales is the engine that makes the world go round. And then you cannot find a thing. You can look around anywhere in this world. It got there somehow by some salesperson.
Yep.
Some salesperson. This is going to be the best part of the podcast. It's all been great. I could talk to you forever. But there's one aspect of the world that we've been exposed to, and I got exposed to it through you and through Greg Pease, is the world of the veterans, Yep. And it wasn't something I seeked out. It just I just stumbled into it. And I'm like, I really dig this, And it's a group of people that are so amazingly appreciative.
Yeah.
Because they are like their own little world, that they've all experienced something special that most of us will never see or experience. And some of it is horrific. Tell us, how did you get involved in the veteran world?
So getting really involved in it. So clarify, my grandpa, he was in the Navy. When most kids were getting stood in the corner or yelled at or whipped, we were doing flutter kicks and wall sits and digging holes and doing all the fun stuff that Navy people do. Which that's debatable. Now that I have all my Marine friends, it's debatable that Navy people do fun stuff. But anyways, we won't go down that rabbit hole. And so there was a portion of it, but from a profession wise, in 2007, 2008, I did business with an individual, a client of mine, who was a veteran. He was also a police officer. And I was able to articulate to that person who I was to the core, right? I didn't have to use all this proper language and talk to them like I'm dealing with a principal of a university. I talked to him like I would talk to everybody, right? And I really enjoyed that. And then the loyalty and everything that was built from that, you know, he sent me other referrals and everything else. And that was a community that I realized, like, hey, I could be myself. These are people that they don't enjoy the manager that was telling me, hey, you got to dress for success. You need to come in with a 3-piece suit and you need to do this and that. I hated that. Like my corporate leashes.
I used to live like that.
My corporate leashes are still in the top drawer of my dresser.
Corporate leashes?
That's what I call them. Ties.
Okay.
Ties are corporate leashes. And so they're in the top drawer of my dresser, and I have them. It's kind of like a fire extinguisher, right? It's there. Does it work? I don't know. Maybe. Is there a fire? There is. Okay, pull it out. So for me, do I have to dress up? I do. Okay, when? Tonight. Do I need a tie? Yep, there they are.
Yeah.
Pull them out.
Yeah.
I've almost gotten to the point where I'm throwing away. I literally have one suit. I have another suit that's actually hanging up in my spare bathroom here at the office.
Just in case.
Literally, I'm giving it away. It doesn't fit me anymore. So I got to give it to somebody, right? I have one suit. And the purpose behind it is take me as I am or don't accept me at all.
I don't know if it's our area of where we live, but this is probably one of the most casual places I've ever lived in my life.
Yes.
I very rarely see a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
You'll see some sales agents, real estate agents downtown Franklin in, you know, their little skinny suits. Oh man, I think my daughter calls it bougie country.
Yeah,
It's very casual around here. So I mean, I think about dressing up all the time. I'm like, what for? Just throw it. Like, I love what Greg does. He just throws a jacket over his t-shirt.
Yeah,
and instantly dressed up.
Yep.
Instantly dressed up. You know, that brings me to this next point, because the thing with the veterans has been so great because it's really kind of transformed what Bark-Aid is about. Of course, it's about the homeless animals and educating the communities about what's going on in their area. But then it's been this red, white, and blue feeling that Bark-Aid is like, oh, say, man, we're about the veterans too. And the music festival kind of morphed into homeless dogs and veterans, you know, and not to say they're the same thing, but it's like the world needs to know more about both, you know? And so one of the groups that I'm working with, several of them, I'm working with Creative Vets and Working Dogs for Vets, and then Project Canine Hero. And what I love about that, and I'm going to bring this subject up, is the PTS. And PTSD is that Jason back in 2006 discovered that these dogs these military dogs that were trained to do something just like the veterans were, just like the people were discarded of once they weren't needed.
Yep. And
he's like, this is BS. They served like I did. I'm going to take care of them. So he takes care of them, and he's well known all over the world for doing so. But my point being is I got into that world, and okay, I might be going in a million directions, so I apologize. Is when I did the timeline therapy with Greg. It was discovering things in your life that are traumatic, that made you do certain things and helping you get past those things. So that's me on a personal level. I haven't served. I kind of wish I did, you know, hearing what they did, but I'm glad they served for us. But what they're going through in that PTS and PT, and I think the majority of the people out there, people that might be listening, people that most likely aren't listening, have no clue about it.
Right.
What these guys go through.
No, I definitely agree with you, especially with dealing with a lot of the people that I have the opportunity to deal with. I want people that are listening to remember a couple different things. For one, any one of us can have PTS or PTSD. Any one of us. So, for example, me being abused as a child. There's things that take me back to that, and I think so. There's certain key words. It used to be until I matured a little bit. If somebody called me the B word, which I won't say it on air because I don't know who's listening, but if someone called me the B word, it was an instant trigger.
Dang.
Instant trigger. And I mean, you could see it. Like my eyes would get lower, my face would get flushed, all the nonverbal things that would happen. You could tell, ooh, he's mad right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so it took a lot of maturing and growing to get away from that. So everybody has it to a degree. And much like Patrick, you said, the dogs are used and then they're discarded. Unfortunately, our veterans are typically used by the government, by the people, meaning that they went over to do something that most of us don't have the stones to do. And they came back, and guess what? The government said, see ya.
Good luck.
Later. Good luck. Hey, here's your, DD-214, peace out, right? And so as that migration back in society, we've created this stigma, which is PTSD. And all of a sudden, if you're dealing with somebody that has PTSD, well, they're too dangerous to work here. Right. Which is false.
Right.
It's false because, again, Sally, the suntan city lady, which I'm just throwing out a random make-believe person, that person may have been exposed to traumatic things in her life that creates a reaction that's uncomfortable for that particular place. Doesn't mean she went to war.
Right.
It just means she experienced life in a different way than most of us do.
Yeah, this phrase has been thrown around quite a bit. It's on a lot of T-shirts and it's a lot of memes. Is it meme or meme? Memes.
I only know that because I have kids.
Be kind to everyone because everybody's going through something that you don't know of or that type of thing. And I'm not getting it correct, but it's true. Is that we all have experienced something different, and I think that's the one, it's interesting. There's a guy I used to work with and now he lives in Nicaragua of all places. He left the country.
Is he a prince?
No, he's a tattooed guy that likes to smoke cigars. Joshua Coburn. And he went around working with, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, let's call it kids with trauma.
Yeah.
And one of the things, he'd go to high schools and speak, and everybody thinks automatically that you and I look. So if someone was looking at the two of us, tatted up, you look kind of like a biker. You could be a biker.
Could be
a thug.
I used to be a biker.
And looking at me like nerd. Nothing in common.
No, this is the Franklin well-dressed man.
But on the surface, people automatically think nothing in common.
Right.
But you're sitting here, we have a lot in common.
Yes.
We do. And one of the things I think we all share in common is some sort of trauma. And so like you experience a trauma that I could not even imagine. And I've experienced some that you probably, but I'm saying is, how did you get through it? How did you get through it? Right. And some people out there aren't getting through it.
Yeah.
What would you say to them to try, like, for example, that abused wife syndrome? They just can't get out of it.
Right.
They can't get out of it.
It's really hard. I wish there was one thing I could say or one phrase I could say, but all of us deal with our reality differently. Meaning that what it takes to escape or pull yourself back or reanalyze or process is going to be different depending on what your past looks like, right? And what I mean by that is maybe somewhere along the way it was acceptable, using the analogy of the wife that's been beaten. Maybe that person grew up in a household where that was acceptable. And so what do you say to that person who's seen 18 plus years of their mother or father being beat by the other person, right? There's not a magical thing, but the one thing I would ask is this: who out there could learn a lesson from you that you could help?
Right.
Who out there could benefit from the trauma you've experienced that you can share that lesson with so they don't have to go through it? Do we want our children going through this? No. So what do? We let them learn from mentors, not mistakes. So we're able to say, hey, you know what? These are some of the things you got to watch out for. And then we have to demonstrate those behaviors. So if we want to see a change in a situation like that, or the abuse, we got to stop the abuse, right? Which means that we can no longer deal with it. But again, going back, sitting here behind this microphone, behind this camera, behind this social media platform that you're watching this on, it's really easy to say.
Isn't it?
It's not really easy to do.
Right. And there's a lot of people hurting out there.
There is.
And I think it goes back to you and your giving.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I actually understood giving, because giving to me in the past, I call it two sections of my life. It's like the first half of my life was before I found God and found this beautiful wife of mine and clarity. And it's a lifelong journey. I don't think you're ever going to get there. But giving in the past was always about me getting something back.
Yes.
And until I really learned that I'm giving this to you because I'm giving this to you.
Right.
And it's not about money.
No. People have to realize something. Time is the most valuable asset that we have, that no dollar amount could buy, that we can never get back. So when we utilize that time, we have to maximize its efficiency. Meaning that if I'm sitting here bringing you down or doing something, am I maximizing that? No, I'm minimizing. In fact, I'm taking your time too. So now I'm a time thief, right? I'm putting you in a worse mental headspace than the one that you should be in. So now I'm stealing your time and your headspace. Now you're super screwed.
Right.
Okay. Whereas if I can productively use the time, kind of like this podcast, this 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes, whatever it is that we're discussing things, this is to analyze and utilize the time that you're sharing with us in order to share with you a lesson that we've learned, so you don't have to learn, but to improve your mental space, to make sure that when you leave this podcast, you're better this way than that way, meaning better up than down.
I have these little notes here, and I wanted to share something with you because, maybe that was just one of those additional things in life where you just have finally broke through your stupidity. Like, because in the past it was always an angle.
Right.
I'm going to give this to you, but I'm not really giving it to you because I'm trying to work something out,
Yeah.
I'm a huge Grant Cardone fan. I've read all his books. I listen to him while I work out every day. And my wife, she's not a big fan. Right. Did we already talk about this? I want to tell you. He's a Scientologist. So my wife automatically is like, I don't like this guy. I don't know why you listen to him. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm a little confused with him because in his books, he'll talk about Christ and he'll talk about God in his books, but I know he's a Scientologist.
Right.
And why is every Scientologist rich? That's a whole other subject.
No, you're absolutely right. Listen, one of the richest people we know with the tooth in the middle of his head is a Scientologist, which we don't know him, but Tom Cruise.
Yes, exactly. The tooth in it.
It is. He's the only man. He's the only human being I've seen with. We have there's a gap right here for most of us. Everybody knows this.
But you ever had a dream so freaking vivid that when you wake up, you're like, damn, I want to either go back to it or like, man, I mean, so vivid. So last week I had a dream and I was working for Grant Cardone's sales team. Okay. And I was with another guy and he was having one of his meetings. Crystal clear. I can remember everything he was talking about. And he comes over and looks at me and he says, and he talks to the guy next to me. He goes, I need to let you two go. I'm like, it was clear. He goes, I'll see you guys outside. But he winks at me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so walks us outside, then grabs me by the arm and pulls me back in the door. He goes, dude, you're just not doing all that you can.
Wow.
He goes, you have the capability of doing so much more. It was like waking up from a bad dream. And I'm like, and I literally told my wife, I said, what? I woke up and said, what else can I do? Yeah. She goes, what are you talking about? Just dream. And it seemed like I almost overnight just changed everything.
Yep.
Because you have 24 hours in a day, so do I.
Yeah.
How we spend that. And I realized, man, I guess I could do more.
We can all do more. So here's the thing. It's about prioritization of what it is we do on a day-to-day. What's important to you.
Right.
So like for me, well, my family is important. I put my kids on the school bus every single day. Every single morning I put them on the bus, right? Could I do more in that time? I could, but I'm doing what appeases me, right? So we always have to remember that angle too, because we could always do more, but we have to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. I tell a lot of people that I coach this, listen, take a day for yourself. Just a day where you're not reactive, you're proactive. So if you don't want to have lunch with someone that day, cool, don't. If you want to go have lunch with the kids that day, do that. Right? Whatever it is we're doing. So, but the act of doing more, yes, I've had a dream before. And literally I have an event called Rappers with Vets where we take gifts to the local VFWs so that veterans in a less fortunate situation are still able to provide a gift for their family.
Nice.
On the holidays, right? And that literally, just like you just described, I woke up and it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I got to do something. And my mind's like, well, what is it? What do you got to do? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm putting my clothes on. We're going to Walmart, right?
Right.
Of all places, Walmart. But back then, I really didn't have a lot of money to spend. I didn't have a lot of excess cash. And so Walmart was like, I can do this here. Well, what are we doing? I don't know. We're getting 2 carts, and we're going to go to the toy aisle. Why? Well, here's what it reminds me of. And my fiance did a really good job about pointing this out. My childhood trauma projects some of these things. The person I didn't get a chance to be around, meaning the absence of, is who I'm starting to become.
Right.
So because when I was young, gifts weren't maybe something we got all the time. I want to make sure kids can experience that. You know, and it's funny, this morning, both my kids have a book fair. And the first thing my fiance says is, don't put too much money on their account. Don't let your childhood trauma make you do that. Because I'm like, they need books. How many? All of them.
Let's get it. My wife is constantly saying to me, I feel like you're always trying to make up for something.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe I was a very self-centered individual in my first half of my life, you know, where I finally figured it out. And it was like, God, it's never too late. I was in my 40s before I figured out I was an idiot, you know.
Yep.
You know, some of your activities and some of the things you do is all this self-love, self-gratification, you know. And here I was traveling around the country with Bark Aid for 7 years like a gypsy, living out of my van, the Barkmobile.
Yeah.
Thinking I was doing something righteous.
Right.
And I was sacrificing my time. I donated over $650,000 to homeless dogs. Yeah. But you know what it was? It was for Patrick's fame and glory.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So I'm like, how do I turn this around, and how do I actually make Barkaid? That almost made me sound like Barkaid was not real. Barkaid is real. It is a 501c3. It is a legitimate nonprofit that I've worked my butt off to get to it. But what I'm saying is I want to, like, okay, yeah, Patrick, you spent that 7 years. Now, how do you make it better? What am I trying to say?
So what you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're trying to say is, how do I prioritize this to allow myself to still have a family life, appease the people that I am here to appease on this earth, and still provide an experience to other people that are going to help benefit them. Other people or animals,
right?
In that case,
right.
But much like me, so I got too involved in being this top producer for this mortgage company and so on and so forth. And eventually my fiance pulls me aside. She says, look, you got a couple choices here, right? You're either going to fix this and start spending time with your family and doing these things,
right,
or you're going to find yourself without one. And I said, oh, that's what we're doing? And selfish me, initially, I'm like, whatever, you can't do this without me, right? That's selfish me. But the other side of me realized, like, I am doing all this work for what purpose?
Right.
For my family.
Right.
So if I don't have a family to do the work for, what's my new purpose? There isn't one. So I need to pull back or find better systems. My thing was find a better system.
And that's where I think the light bulb went off on that dream.
Yeah.
Is like, I've got real estate, hair, Barkaid Music Festival, and I need a system for that, you know? So it just kind of light bulb went off, like, man, okay, boom, 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 boom. I went and got a briefcase for each subject. This is the Barkaid briefcase. This is the hair briefcase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it really made a hell of the system, right? The system. And I think part of it is like, okay, how does Barkaid transition to the dream that Patrick had in 2010 of a music festival,
right?
And make it as, you know, what's something that drives me? Have you ever seen the documentary Fire?
I have not.
It's about a kid up in New York City that was going to have the party of all parties.
Yes.
The Fire Festival.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
The Fire Festival. And he was going to have it on Pablo Escobar's island, and he had Ja Rule as his partner. Millions and millions of investor dollars came in, and he just squandered it, partied the whole time. That show motivates me to make sure that this Barkaid Music Festival is the most legit shit ever.
Right. Well, but here's the thing you have to realize. And so here's where that failure, and this is just analyzation from what I took from that failure existed because of the poor planning. But the thing I want people to realize is if your idea is good enough, you can be nobody, and people with money want to get involved in that something as long as you have execution and a plan. Right. So with Barkaid, for example, you have all the pieces. It's just about finding the right person that wants to put their money in that piggy bank and say, here.
And that's
Greg
the next
and I were
step.
talking about it yesterday.
Is that right?
We were talking about a very similar thing. Is most people, their biggest hurdle is, well, I don't have the money to do this, so I can't do it. Go find the money. It's really easy. There's a lot of people with a lot of money that just want to find your problem because it's a solution to something they're experiencing, and so they want to invest in it. Now they're going to look and they're going to ask you, well, what's my return? Well, with a 503c, there's not really a return. You get your there is to a degree, but I can't promise you a monetary.
It's so
exchange.
interesting you bring that up. I literally thought about this whole walking in the door this morning. Like, it's just a matter of finding someone that wants to do what you do but can't do it. But I've got this money.
Right.
I would love to be a part of this.
Yep.
And God has not let me down yet. Look how far we've come and who's involved right now.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And one of the reasons that we are this far in this involved is because I got over another one of my personal traumas and issues of not trying to do it all by myself.
Right. You can't. I mean, even in my coaching thing, I had to bring on an assistant who literally, so my coaching calls are 1 hour long, right? And I sit there, and sometimes there's 10 people on the call, sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 1. But the call would end, and then I have to put the notes in the system, and then I have to put their homework in, and I didn't take
like
notes
a doctor.
I had to do all that stuff, and I'm like a doctor. I had to find a nurse. And I'm like, hey, can you fix this problem for me? And guess what? There was a monetary exchange for the solution to that problem, but the exchange monetarily, and this is what I want people to remember. If you are worth $20 an hour, and I'm just going to use just $20 an hour, right? If you're worth $20 an hour, and when I say worth, I mean your time. If your time pays you $20 an hour, and there's a part of an activity that could be exchanged for $5 an hour, you are still at a financial gain. You've made $5 of a problem has went away, and you're able to quantify. Now, this applies more for people that are self-employed. But if I can go duplicate or take that extra time and become worth $30 an hour, I didn't lose $5. I gained $5.
Right.
Right. And so we have to stop thinking about, oh, this costs money. Of course it does. Because we have to allocate somebody else's time to do it, or a system which took somebody else's time to build to create the solution. But if we can make more, we actually didn't lose, we gained.
That's a subject I just listened to working out on Friday. Listened to Grant Cardone. He talked about people don't lose you money.
Right.
Lack of systems loses you money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but it's always evolving too. You know, the systems that you do today would never have been the system you tried 5 years ago or whatever. So one of my favorite movies is The Accountant. You ever seen that movie?
Maybe. I don't watch a lot of TV.
Oh, you know, you're all right. You're not missing anything. It's I can't remember the guy's name. All of a sudden, my mind, when you think of something, my mind goes blank.
He's like
it's J-Lo's husband. Come on.
a guy.
I'm going to edit this crap out, but I'm going to.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah, hey, it is. It's how it is.
No,
you know, isn't it interesting? Like, you know, I was going to also, when we were talking about having problems and stuff and not being able to get out of the rut or whatever, there was a song by a great band. I can't even remember the band, but I remember the verse, and the verse was, show me how to move on because pain is the only thing I know.
See, I thought you were going to go with Stone Temple Pilots, Down in a Hole.
And I still got the verse wrong.
Two different
But there's a
realities.
song at the very end, and that we're going to wrap this up for you with this. There's a song at the very end as he's driving away into the sunset called All I Want to Do Is Just Leave Something Behind.
Yep.
So what do you want to leave behind?
That's a really good question. Actually, I know the answer to that. That's what's funny. My goal in life is to impact 1 million people. I preach this all the time. I share this all the time because it is a very specific goal. And so what I want to leave behind is a legacy of people that I have been able and afforded the opportunity to help, and hopefully a message that still exchanges itself after I'm gone to continue to help people. I want my children to be proud of what their father stood for, not what their father necessarily did. And what I mean by that is when they put us both, or everybody, not both, not together, when they put us in that hole, nobody remembers all the fortune and fame that you have as much as they remember the way you made them feel, right? Or what you did to help, or what you did to help them evolve and grow. And so I hope that when my day comes, my children are proud of the father that they have, and that my memory lives on as a person who always served to help.
I don't think I've ever been to a funeral or a wake and anybody come up to me and say, man, that guy had a lot of money.
Right. Ever. Like it
or the guy was a dick.
Right.
Or he was just an angel and we're going to miss him.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. The money doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, Bill Gates and all these other super billionaires would give more money for more time. Right. If the doctor said, Billy, you got an hour to live, unless you write a $1 million check for every hour you want to live, guess how many checks would be written?
A lot.
Every check until the bank account was probably past drawn.
Exactly.
So the point is, let's do what we can with the time that we have now, and let's maximize that time, and let's leave people in a better place than the place we found them.
All right. Spotlight's on you. Tell people how to get a hold of you.
Really easy. If you go to ajnashville.com, all my contact info, feel free to follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Set up a time to talk. You know, if you're going through something and something that I may be able to help you with, listen, I'm not a licensed psychologist. What I am is an individual that's been through a lot in the past, which are probably some of the same things that you could be struggling with now. That being said, if there's ever a point where I can help somebody, just reach out to me. Again, website's pretty easy, ajnashville.com.
Awesome. Well done.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Mics
Peace
are
out.
on this time?
Huh? They're on this time. Lomatini lit up, and I'm out. See you.